Hi there, my name is Kelvin Davidson, Chief Property Economist at CoreLogic. Just a quick video update I'm doing here for the build review, just around the current scene for people looking at their first new build, either potentially buying property off the shelf or taking on your own construction project. A lot of issues around new builds all of the time, so good to just give a wee update on what's going on. So for me, I guess a few things to be aware of. We are seeing in the data that there is a new build premium that's opened up. It's always been there, but it's perhaps got a little bit wider over the past couple of years with the favourable treatment that new builds have had within the lending and tax system, which is, I think, probably pushed people towards new builds, created that bit of a price premium. We're currently seeing that in the range of about $50,000 to $70,000, depending on which part of the country you're in. Obviously, it does vary a bit, but that's sort of a fairly standard gap between an existing property versus a new build. So they are more expensive. But of course, you get a newer house, potentially with better insulation standards, less maintenance over the long run, these types of things. So there's always trade-offs, pros and cons there. As I say, lending rules have been favourable for new builds over the last little while. The loan-to-value ratio rule system does favour new builds. So as an owner-occupier, you can get in with less than the 20% deposit, which is the requirement for an existing property. And for investors, you can get in with less than the 35% deposit, which is the requirement for an existing property. Now, the banks have their own rules, of course, so it's not free for all on new builds, but those deposit requirements are a bit less. Right now, as a property investor, you can claim interest deductions, full deductibility on new build properties, as opposed to less than that on existing properties. Now, of course, with the change in government and the reinstatement of mortgage interest deductibility, that will change. But right now, the tax system also favours new builds. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And we've certainly seen new builds rise as a percentage of the purchases being made by both first home buyers and investors. So there has been that shift towards new builds, which has, I think, created a little bit of that price premium. Certainly been a good range of choice lately in terms of new builds, a lot of new projects coming online, range of stock, townhouses. That's been a big part of consenting lately. So I guess it's just creating that choice for people amongst that new build stock of property. So what might happen next? Well, as I've said, the government has obviously changed and the tax system is going to get less favourable for new builds. The interest deductibility is going to be fully reinstated over the course of the next couple of tax years for all properties and all investors, regardless of whether you're existing or new and whether the property is existing or new. So potentially that price premium for new builds might fade a little bit. Existing properties might catch up. So it could be that actually you start to see that price gap close a little bit. So potentially factor that into decision making. Get a bit of give and take. Again, new build will still be better in terms of quality, you would think, on average. But yeah, there might be some price differentials closing up at the same time. Even if the tax system changes, the LVR system, those deposit requirements are still set to be more favourable for new builds. No suggestion of any real changes there. And we might see some caps on debt to income ratios this year or 2024 and from the Reserve Bank in terms of capping how much loan, the size of the loan that people can get in relation to their incomes. Now, we understand that within that system, there's going to be exemptions for new builds like there is under the LVR system. So, again, thinking about the lending rules, there is going to be that favourable treatment either under LVRs and or debt to income ratios for new build properties. So, I think there'll be a decent level of demand out there for new builds. Yes, mortgage rates still challenging. We're not going to see any significant falls in mortgage rates until perhaps the end of 2024. So that's going to be a challenge for next year. But a decent level of demand. We've got population growth, we've got high migration. We're going to need new build properties. And of course, at the same time, the cost growth has really slowed down. Supply chains easing up, maybe a little bit of capacity opening up in the construction sector too. So that's really just reining in that cost growth, which should help to support demand as well. I don't think new builds are going to get cheaper necessarily, but at least not grow at the same speed in terms of costs that they have been lately. So that's potentially a benefit as well. Now, as I've said, of course, whether you're buying existing property or new property, whatever you're doing over the next sort of year, mortgage rates are still going to be a challenge for people who need to borrow. So that's going to be putting pressure on debt servicing. No real change there likely for a year or so. So certainly pros and cons, as with everything. There are some favourable things out there for new builds, but of course, whatever you buy, mortgage rates are still going to be a challenge if you're using debt, of course. So what would I do in this environment? Well, I'm out of the market, so pretty happy with where I live and all of that. So and a pretty tough question. Obviously, it comes down to very individual circumstances. All I can really say is that I live in a new build. It gave us what we wanted. You can set out your floor plan, choose sort of what you want, and be a bit more selective about that. Get what you really want in a property, and that suited us. So, but I guess for every property buying decision, it comes down to personal taste, personal choices, and presumably, sometimes, often, needs to be more than just the financials. It's those non-financial things as well. Location, does the style of property suit? Does it give you what you want? So, buy new, buy existing if you want. That's down to the individual. Certainly no financial advice, and all I can say is we bought a new build because it gave us what it gave us what we wanted. But of course, existing properties might do that as well. So ultimately, down to personal choice. Finances need to work, and of course, needs to work for other reasons as well. More generally, we have to accept that we need more new builds. Big fan of housing supply. We need more houses in the country. Help with housing affordability over the long run. So anything that encourages new build properties, encourages people to buy them, encourages developers to keep bringing these things forward seems to be a pretty good idea. Intensifying the housing stock we already have, a shift to smaller dwellings, making better use of our brownfields land, all of these things seems to be a pretty good idea. Focusing on land supply, getting the infrastructure in the right place, the right properties in the right place, and I suppose a bit of a focus in terms of public policy potentially on administration costs, getting resource consent, getting dwelling consent, all of these things that can slow stuff down. So anything that can be improved on that front would be welcome. But in the short run, 2024, like I said, pros and cons for new builds. Ultimately, whether you look at a new build or an existing property is going to be down to personal choice. But whichever decision is made, if you're borrowing, then debt servicing and those mortgage rates are going to be a continued challenge. So that's probably all I've got to say. Good luck with any property decisions, and hopefully everyone has a great Christmas. Thank you.